You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your PMP certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Integrating project planning activities is one of the most important responsibilities of the project manager, yet it is also one of the least visible. Every project generates multiple subsidiary plan scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, stakeholders, and procurement, and each of these is valuable on its own. But until they are brought together into one coherent whole, the project remains vulnerable to contradictions and gaps. Integration transforms this collection of plans into a unified project management plan that stakeholders can trust. This integrated plan becomes the engine for tradeoffs. When scope shifts, the ripple effects on schedule, cost, and quality can be evaluated honestly. On the exam, stems that describe conflicting subplans or orphan changes are testing your understanding of integration. The project manager's stance in integration is that of an integrator and decision broker. You are not simply compiling documents, you are aligning perspectives and creating a decision-making framework. Each subsidiary plan is authored by specialists, schedulers, quality experts, procurement managers, but the project manager ensures the sum is greater than the parts. Integration requires asking tough questions. Does the schedule reflect the procurement lead times? Are stakeholder communication needs aligned with governance? Does the budget baseline match the resource plan? On the exam, correct answers emphasize holistic integration, not isolated optimization. PMI's philosophy is clear. The project manager is the one person accountable for ensuring the plan functions as a whole. Inputs and interfaces are the raw material of integration. The project charter provides the high-level purpose, objectives, and constraints that frame all subsidiary plans. Enterprise policies and governance models define the rules of engagement approvals, escalation paths, and reporting conventions. Historical information, lessons learned, and organizational assets provide practical benchmarks. Stakeholder and benefits goals anchor the plan and value, while constraints such as funding limits or regulatory deadlines shape what is possible. Delivery mode predictive, agile, or hybrid drives the level of detail and flexibility. On the exam, stems that describe mismatches between delivery mode and planning depth often point to integration failures. Correct answers emphasize tailoring the integrated plan to both context and constraints. Assumptions and external dependencies are also crucial interfaces. Every project relies on assumptions such as the vendor will deliver on time or the regulator will approve within 90 days. These assumptions must be logged and linked across plans because if they prove false, multiple baselines may be affected. Dependencies, such as shared resources with other projects, must also be reflected. Without visibility, integration collapses into wishful thinking. PMI stresses that assumptions and dependencies must be recorded early and revisited frequently. On the exam, correct answers involve documenting, validating, and communicating these interfaces, not ignoring them until later stages. Developing the integrated plan is an act of consolidation and alignment. Each subsidiary plan is brought into a single approved document or system, with contradictions resolved and overlaps clarified. Baselines for scope, schedule, and cost are defined together, not separately, so that performance can be measured consistently. The change path is explicitly described, how requests are submitted, analyzed, approved, and reflected in baselines. Governance checkpoints and decision rights are defined, ensuring everyone knows who approves what and when. Performance measures, such as earned value metrics or velocity trends, are chosen and standardized. On the exam, correct answers emphasize consolidating into one approved whole, not leaving subplans scattered or undocumented. An integrated plan is also a governance tool. By defining baselines and decision rights, it becomes the anchor for accountability. Without an integrated plan, every change becomes a negotiation in the moment, vulnerable to politics and inconsistency. With it, the project has a framework. Proposed changes are analyzed against the integrated plan, trade-offs are visible, and approvals are documented. PMI emphasizes that integration is about creating a single reference point where scope, schedule, and cost meet. On the exam, stems about uncoordinated changes or approvals usually signal the absence of an integrated plan. The correct answer is to integrate and formalize, not to patch ad hoc. Tailoring is an essential part of integration. Not every project requires the same level of planning rigor. High-uncertainty projects may require lightweight, adaptive plans, while compliance-heavy initiatives demand detailed documentation. Tailoring involves adjusting processes and artifacts to fit risk, uncertainty, and regulatory requirements. The project manager must also keep governance visible, but lightweight stakeholders must know how decisions are made, but bureaucracy should not paralyze progress. PMI stresses documenting tailoring rationale, why certain processes were simplified, and what benefits are expected. On the exam, correct answers highlight intentional tailoring with documented rationale, not arbitrary shortcuts. Governance alignment extends beyond the project. Integrated plans must match portfolio and program rules, ensuring consistency with organizational priorities. For example, a project may use agile delivery internally, but its reporting cadence must align with quarterly program reviews. Documenting this alignment prevents surprises at governance checkpoints. Tailoring also involves explaining these adjustments. We will use agile iterations but provide milestone summaries aligned with stage gates. On the exam, stems often describe friction between team-level practices and organizational governance. Correct answers emphasize aligning with higher-level rules while maintaining delivery discipline. Configuration management ensures that the integrated plan remains trustworthy. Version control is essential. Every approved update must be tracked, with a clear record of what changed, when, and why. Without configuration management, multiple versions of the plan may circulate, creating confusion and conflict. PMI emphasizes a single source of truth, one repository where the current plan lives, who owns it, and how it is accessed. This repository also serves as the audit trail for approvals and updates. On the exam, distractors often describe informal updates. The correct answer emphasizes version control and configuration discipline. A single source of truth extends beyond the plan itself. Logs, artifacts, and repositories must all integrate with the plan so stakeholders can see one consistent picture. Issue logs link to schedule adjustments, risk registers connect to contingency reserves, and procurement contracts align with cost baselines. Without this integration, the project manager is forced to reconcile conflicting information manually. PMI stresses automation where possible, but above all, clarity. Everyone must know where to find the current truth. On the exam, correct answers involve consolidating into one repository, not scattering artifacts across disconnected systems. Configuration management also protects governance credibility. When an audit occurs, stakeholders need to see who approved what and when. A proper configuration record shows approvals, rationale, and impact analysis. This prevents disputes and strengthens trust. Without such records, teams are vulnerable to claims of mismanagement. The exam often tests this implicitly. Stems may describe stakeholders disputing a decision, and the correct answer is to refer to the documented audit trail. PMI expects project managers to preserve the integrity of the plan through disciplined configuration practices. Integration is therefore about more than combining documents. It is about ensuring coherence, consistency, and credibility. By consolidating subplans into one approved whole, defining baselines, tailoring to context, and maintaining configuration discipline, the project manager creates a system that stakeholders can trust. This integrated plan becomes the lens through which every decision is analyzed and every trade-off explained. On the exam, pitfalls include orphan subplans, undocumented tailoring, and informal updates. The correct answers consistently emphasize one integrated plan, documented rationale, and a single source of truth. To close, remember that integration transforms planning from a collection of documents into a decision engine. It gives sponsors and teams a framework for balancing scope, schedule, cost, and quality in real time. It ensures that governance is respected, tailoring is intentional, and updates are controlled. Most importantly, it creates a single story about the project that everyone can reference. On the exam, when you see questions about conflicting priorities, unclear baselines, or changes without approval, the underlying test is whether you understand the role of integration in project planning. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Integration is not a one-time activity. Plans must evolve as projects move forward and more is learned. One powerful technique for this is rolling wave planning, also called progressive elaboration. Near-term work is planned in detail, while work further in the future is outlined at a higher level. This avoids wasted effort planning far-off activities that will likely change. As the project advances, those higher-level plans are elaborated. Agile projects embody this naturally, planning detailed work for the next sprint and leaving future sprints at the feature or epic level. On the exam, stems that describe excessive detail too early often point toward rolling wave as the correct adjustment. Iterative planning must also be matched to project risk and cadence. Projects with high uncertainty may need frequent refresh cycles, weekly or monthly reviews of assumptions and risks. Stable projects may refresh less often, perhaps quarterly. In hybrid environments, iteration blends with milestone forecasting. Teams plan sprints, while leadership expects forecasts at major checkpoints. Integration ensures that both views align, so incremental work adds up to milestone progress. On the exam, correct answers emphasize aligning the refresh cadence to risk and governance, not applying one-size-fits-all detail. Stakeholders must always understand the planning horizon. Nothing erodes confidence faster than hearing "we don't know" without context. Rolling wave planning must be explained. Here is what we know in detail for the next quarter, and here is our forecast for the rest of the year. This builds trust by balancing realism with transparency. Agile teams use backlog forecasts to show similar visibility. On the exam, distractors often involve hiding uncertainty. The correct answer is to acknowledge uncertainty and explain the rolling wave approach openly. Another cornerstone of integration is assumptions and constraints management. Every plan is built on assumptions that resources will be available, vendors will deliver, or policies will not change. Constraints, such as fixed deadlines or budget ceilings, also shape decisions. These must be logged in living documents, not buried in kickoff notes. Integration ensures that assumptions and constraints are reflected across all plan schedule, cost, risk, and procurement. On the exam, stems describing unrealistic expectations often test whether assumptions were managed properly. The correct response involves maintaining and validating a live assumption log. Assumptions that remain untested become risks. If the project assumes a vendor will deliver in 6 weeks but never validates, that assumption may suddenly fail, creating an issue. PMI expects project managers to convert stale or high-impact assumptions into risks or issues and treat them with appropriate responses. Validating assumptions early reduces surprises later. On the exam, options that involve ignoring or deferring assumptions are usually wrong. The correct answers emphasize surfacing, testing, and tracking them visibly. Constraints must also be communicated consistently. If a fixed regulatory deadline shapes the schedule, every stakeholder must be aware. Misalignment creates wasted effort when one plan assumes flexibility and another assumes rigidity. Integration ensures that constraints are not just logged but shared across all plans. On the exam, stems describing late discovery of constraints often signal integration failure. Correct answers emphasize documenting constraints early and keeping ripple effects visible to stakeholders. Cross-plan consistency checks are a practical expression of integration. The most basic check is scope-schedule-cost alignment. If scope expands but the cost baseline and schedule remain unchanged, something is wrong. Quality and non-functional requirements must be reflected in acceptance criteria and testing strategies. Procurement schedules must align with the master schedule, not assume vendors can deliver instantly. Communication plans must match decision cadence, ensuring stakeholders receive updates in time to act. On the exam, distractors often suggest fixing one plan in isolation. The correct approach is to perform cross-plan consistency checks. These checks prevent silent drift. For example, if procurement schedules do not align with resource needs, teams may idle waiting for parts. If communication cadences do not match governance cycles, decisions may arrive too late. Integration creates a safety net by asking, do all the parts of the plan fit together logically? PMI expects project managers to challenge inconsistencies early. On the exam, stems describing uncoordinated delays or bottlenecks often require integration checks as the solution. Let's apply this to a scenario. Imagine the quality plan mandates additional testing cycles to ensure compliance, but the schedule plan shows no slack to accommodate them. The project manager faces choices: cut testing, extend the schedule quietly, integrate the plans through impact analysis and trade-offs, or rebaseline immediately. The correct next action is to integrate by analyzing impacts, proposing trade-offs to stakeholders, and seeking approval. For example, extending schedule, increasing cost, or adjusting scope could each be options. Cutting tests or rebaselining without approval would be governance failures. On the exam, the right choice usually involves integration plus impact analysis, not shortcuts. In an agile environment, the same scenario might be resolved differently. Instead of adding long sequential tests, the team may incorporate automated checks within each sprint, maintaining cadence without slipping milestones. This shows how integration tailors to context. Predictive projects rely on structured analysis and rebaselining, while Agile integrates quality checks continuously. On the exam, clues about delivery mode guide which solution to choose, but the principle of integrating plans through analysis remains constant. Exam pitfalls in this domain often involve acting before integrating. One pitfall is rebaselining scope, cost, or schedule first, without analysis or approval. Another is accepting changes in isolation, such as agreeing to a scope increase without checking schedule and cost impacts. A third is ignoring assumptions and constraints until they fail. A fourth is tailoring without documenting rationale. On the exam, distractor answers often sound fast or practical, but they bypass integration. The correct answers emphasize analysis, alignment, and documentation before commitment. Rebaselining prematurely is particularly dangerous. If baselines are shifted casually, they lose their meaning as a reference for variance. PMI stresses that baselines move only after structured impact analysis, stakeholder approval, and governance compliance. On the exam, options to rebaseline first are nearly always incorrect. The correct sequence is analyze right-pointing arrow, communicate right-pointing arrow, approve right-pointing arrow rebaseline. Integration protects the credibility of baselines, which in turn protects decision-making. Another common trap is ignoring the links between subplans. For example, if the resource plan promises 10 full-time staff but the cost plan only funds 8, the integrated plan is inconsistent. Similarly, if communication plans deliver updates monthly but governance expects weekly status, alignment is broken. Integration requires vigilance in spotting and correcting these misalignments. On the exam, correct answers emphasize reconciling across plans rather than optimizing within one silo. PMI's philosophy is holistic coherence, not local perfection. A quick playbook can help project managers internalize integration. Step 1. Build one plan, consolidating all subsidiary plans into a coherent whole. Step 2. Make trade-offs visible, showing how scope, schedule, and cost interact. Step 3. Set a change path, documenting how requests will be processed. Step 4. Tailor intentionally, documenting rationale and benefits. Step 5. Keep assumptions alive and check cross-plan alignment continuously. Step 6. Refresh plans iteratively on a cadence that matches risk and governance needs. On the exam, answers that echo this playbook reflect PMI's integrated mindset. In conclusion, integration transforms fragmented subplans into a single story of the project. Rolling wave planning balances detail with flexibility, assumption management keeps risks visible, and consistency checks prevent silent drift. Scenario analysis shows that integration is about analyzing impacts and proposing trade-offs, not making isolated or premature commitments. Exam pitfalls usually involve acting first and analyzing later. The correct answers consistently emphasize one integrated plan, clear governance, and disciplined configuration. PMI's message is clear. Integration is the decision engine that holds the project together. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.